Ed, could you talk, and also I think Professor Freed, about the development of what they call the political deputy solicitor general? I don't think a lot of people are aware of that position and what its function was to be, and how it's evolved over the years. And also I'd really be interested in knowing how effective it has been.
Well, I was a political deputy, and as a matter of fact, I had been invited by Attorney General Smith to be the first political deputy, but was unable to do it for family reasons, and warmly suggested that they ask my colleague Paul Bator to do it. And they did, and he agreed, and it was wildly successful. I mean, because Bator was an incredibly brilliant and articulate and elegant presence. The occasion for that was a structural point. It'll happen that the Solicitor General will be recused for a variety of reasons, or maybe just out of town. And the decisions that have to be made are sometimes extremely delicate, very sensitive, politically sensitive. And I think the SG's office might have been the only or one of the very few offices where there might be something of such delicacy, where the chief of the office, who is a presidential appointee, is not present, and it necessarily falls to, in fact, a civil servant. The political deputy meant that there was somebody always present who was not, who was in fact also a not confirmed, but a presidential appointee. And that had two advantages. First, it had an advantage for the political process, but it also had a great advantage for the wonderful professional staff of the office, because they did not feel themselves under a kind of pressure which perhaps they couldn't have borne. It was an insulating function. But in my experience, and when I look at the roster of so-called principal deputies or political deputies, they have all served that insulating function to preserve rather than to somehow dilute the independence of the office. I think it's been a very successful innovation.
I agree completely with that. I should say that when the position was instituted, I think it's fair to say it was not particularly well received within the office. I think that it was a time in which I think was a career person then, I am now, in which there was some sense of that we were under scrutiny or under scrutiny, let's put it that way, or whether our views were in line. I think that was a very melodramatic period, and when I look back on it, I think that the office was too insulated and too removed from the rest of the department, the rest of the government, and I think that we, when I look back at that time, that we sort of conceived ourselves as law finders, or that we were the ones who were going to, develop the position of the United States, and that other input were recommendations, but was in some sense interference. I'm overstating it, but I think there was that sense about the office when I was there. And so I think that the institution of the position had additional force to it in terms of the climate of the times. But I think to whatever extent we had that view internally, it was good for that to have been eliminated, or I don't know if it's been entirely eliminated, but I think there was an arrogance that went with that I think that institutionally frankly, by virtue of that occasion, I think it caused a lot of us to kind of rethink in a broader way, what our role was in terms of being career people in the office, not detracting from anything that we've said here, but just I think maybe we were a little too self-important. But the position has worked out terrifically. I think we, as Charles said, we have had very able and great colleagues in that position down through the years. And it is a position in which the principal deputy is not the deputy in the sense that he or she is supervising the rest of us. There's a colleague relationship, so I think that helps. But there are a number of ways in which I think that the principal deputy, as I prefer to think of it, serves the important function. There is the buffer function. There is the explaining function, I think, where somebody elsewhere in the government says, "What the heck is going on?" And you can pick up the phone. And at a comparable level, it doesn't require the general counsel of such an agency calling the Solicitor General, but it can be done on a slightly more informal way. And the person who holds that position is often networked to other people in other departments, and so I think it works as a practical matter. I also think that there's a kind of a liaison function within the office. The Solicitor General is very busy, and so that for speaking as one of the other deputies, having that colleague relationship with a political appointee who is not the Solicitor General, I think really facilitates the work of the office, and I also think it's for the career assistants in the office, the principal deputy serves a very valuable function of being an intermediary or a facilitator between the Solicitor General and the career staff. So I think, I mean, the rest of you would know better than I, but I can imagine having a confidant in that position where you can go to the principal deputy and somebody who, you don't have to treat like a career person. You can just ask perfectly candid questions that you might feel less comfortable asking one of us.
And that, the earlier, I agree totally with what has been said, and the intermediation function is vitally important for the Solicitor General to effectively carry on his or her responsibilities. And part of that intermediation function, which we may end up talking about, has to do with squabbles within the Justice Department. We're concentrating somewhat in the conversation thus far on the White House and the Justice Department or the Solicitor General's office. I found in my experience that my sharpest conflicts were with the Office of Legal Counsel, which does carry the torch of executive power. It is there to defend the prerogatives of the President. And the great song of the unitary executive branch is sung very lustily in the halls of the Office of the Legal Counsel. And if you're not singing right in tune with the Office of Legal Counsel, there will be you-know-what to pay. And the political deputy knows how to sing the song with accompaniment or a cappella, and can thus try to explain to the police in the Office of Legal Counsel that the Solicitor General has not really taken leave of his senses, or, as was said in administrations in which I was privileged to serve, is a squish.
Let me
the
say
unpardonable sin.
I want to say something about the context. I mean, this is all well and good about government policy and restructuring the department, but the question of the political deputy, to my recollection, arose with respect to the Bob Jones University case, where the question, this was segregated practices by Bob Jones University in terms of African-American students. And the situation was that when the case got to the Supreme Court, the Attorney General, Rex Lee, had to recuse himself because he had been Solicitor General but also President of Brigham Young. The next person was Larry Wallace, the prior most senior and most celebrated litigant before the Supreme Court. I think he argued 158 cases before he left the Solicitor General's office. He had taken a different position from the new position of the government in an earlier filing, so he could not represent the administration. The result of this was that the Supreme Court appointed a private lawyer, William T. Coleman, to represent the interests of the parties that the prior administration had been on the side of. And I think that caused a difficulty, needless to say, for the Justice Department, for the Supreme Court, I think for generally the operation of the Solicitor General's office. So I think this change of having a political deputy, but I hate the name. I think it's a deputy who comes in and does the types of things that Ed was describing. And indeed, the people who've come in have been of superior character, great learning and sophistication, and great people to have around in an office like the SG's.
Yeah, I like the name principal deputy, not political deputy. But I think, I mean, it's important to understand that there are only two political appointees in the office of the Solicitor General, the Solicitor General and the principal deputy, and everyone else in the office is a career lawyer. And I do think, you know, perhaps somewhat paradoxically, that having a principal deputy has helped to maintain the autonomy of the office, ensure that the career lawyers in the office are really the backbone and foundation of the office, are doing what they should be doing and representing the interests of the United States. And the other thing that's important to recognize about the position of principal deputy is it's not, as Ed alluded to, it's not someone who's serving as a chief of staff, so to speak, for the Solicitor General, who's overseeing all of the work in the office on behalf of the Solicitor General. The principal deputy comes in and has a docket, just like each of the other three deputies, and really functions for purposes of the workload of the office, just like each of the other three deputies. And it's the additional sort of buffering role that person serves that distinguishes the principal deputy position.